Welcome back. And today we said we're going to shed light on one of the most deadliest attacks that took place on northern Sinai and claimed several lives of our military and police personnel, and they targeted military officers, military units, and directorate headquarters of the police, and the lives of civilians also. Also many injuries were recorded. So we're going to shed some light on the deadliest attacks, and one militant group claimed responsibility later on of this deadliest attack, and we're going to shed the light on the outcome of this deadliest attack on northern Sinai. And of course we all know that President Sisi have cut short his visit to Addis Ababa, where he attended the AU summit and came over to pay his condolences to the Egyptian people and the families of the martyrs of the northern Sinai deadliest attack that took place on Thursday. And we're very delighted to have with us Ambassador Ali El Hefny, former Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs. Good morning, Your Excellency.
Good morning, Ian.
A very good morning to you, sir. As my dear colleague Dina said, we have two main topics today: the African Summit and what happened there, and the terrorist attacks which took place on Thursday in northern Sinai. Let's first, since we do have the opportunity to have a high-ranking diplomat, whenever we do have a major terrorist event like that, the response of the international community regarding what's going on in Egypt, was it expected to be just condemnations, as we have heard yesterday? Was it to give offers to give a hand to fight terrorism inside Egypt? Was it to unify, to respond to President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi when he said more than once, in more than occasion, it's a global threat and it's not directed only to a specific region or a specific country? Or how do you see it?
Let me start by expressing my condolences for the families of the victims of that sad incident that we had a couple of days ago in El Arish, and condolences expressed to all Egyptians as well, and our best wishes for the injured people for a speedy recovery. Now, as far as the reactions are concerned, it's good to have such reactions worldwide, whether it is at the level of the African Union Summit, the African leaders, the world dignitaries that were attending the summit, or the other reactions that we had from within the Arab world, or the countries with the Muslim majority, or in other countries. It's good to have such reactions. It's good to express solidarity with Egypt in its war, because I do believe that it is a war. And President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has said it many times, but sometimes the message does not get through. And people, they don't have the same comprehension of what is happening in Egypt as we do here in Egypt. It takes time until they understand. We had that problem within Africa. Even before President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi took over as a president, he has received many delegations from Africa and from many other countries, and he has warned of the extent of the challenge that we are faced with in Egypt. Let me say something here. We are dealing with an organization or a group that was initiated almost a century ago.
Yeah.
And it's based on a certain ideology. And the use of violence is the main value that the Muslim brothers, they believe in spreading violence to achieve their goals, to reach power, to rule. And they gained a tremendous clout, a tremendous extension, not just within Egypt or the Arab world, but elsewhere in the whole world nowadays. Unfortunately, that they have the backing of many countries. We are faced with a tremendous challenge, and I hope that the Egyptians are going to understand the extent of what we are faced with in Egypt nowadays, because understanding is very important to have a good appreciation of, or the right appreciation of the situation that is prevailing in Egypt nowadays. Now, this group has gone much richer and has the support of many secret services, many countries, enormous amounts of money are being poured in Egypt, and the state is faced with not just the terrorist organizations, but we are talking here about a combination or an alliance between or among several cartels or organizations. We're talking about crimes organizations, we are talking about narcotic trafficking organizations, we are talking about illicit arm trafficking organizations, we are talking about radical and extremist organizations, and we are talking about terrorism or terrorist organizations. And from within the Muslim Brotherhood, we have witnessed the creation of dozens and dozens of other organizations, smaller organizations and smaller groups. So in fact, we have to have a good comprehension of what we are up to in Egypt nowadays. The Egyptians,
but unfortunately, as I'm always saying, sir, we are very passionate. And these days, every and each Egyptian has nothing to do or to think about except revenge, except feeling that we are very angry, furious, and the funeral which was held for the security personnel of Egypt, which was attended, or to be accurate, led by Prime Minister Engineer Ibrahim Mahlab and the Ministers of Defense, of Interior, of Youth and Sport. I think every and each Egyptian would like or love to be there and to pay farewell by himself or herself to those martyrs. We are going to live for 2 or 3 minutes with this detailed report with the funeral of those martyrs.
Dr. Hassisi controlled the visit to Ethiopia for an African Union summit on Friday after the killing of at least 30 soldiers and police officers in Sinai. Before separate attacks on security forces in North Sinai on Thursday night were among the bloodiest in years. Al-Sisi left Addis Ababa after meeting with the Ethiopian Premier following the AU summit's opening session. Most of Thursday's casualties occurred in the bombing of a military site and base in Al-Arish, Sinai provincial capital. Security sources in Sinai said that 3 military planes left Al-Arish for Cairo Friday morning carrying 30 body bags. A major investment conference is set for March, where the government hopes to attract billions of huge infrastructure projects. Egypt will also launch the parliamentary elections the same month. Egyptian soldiers and police are often targeted at outposts outside Sinai's main towns. After 2 attacks in October, in which 33 security personnel were killed, Egypt declared the state of emergency in the area where Sinai borders Gaza and accelerated plans to create a buffer zone. Egypt's Al-Sisi says that Egypt is fighting the war on terrorism and enjoys the support of Western and Gulf Arab allies.
Welcome back, and we're still on with the breakfast show. Now, our thorough look over the attack that took place on northern Sinai and targeted military and lots of official state security personnel as victims who fell martyrs, and also injured civilians. And we're very delighted to have with us Ambassador Ali El Hefny, who's going to continue his thorough look and full assessment of what happened. He's former Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs. And my question to you, Your Excellency, you were talking about the nature of this one of the deadliest attacks since Karam al-Qawadis. the way it has been carried out and the way it is organized and the way it was executed and how targeted those very important and vital units of the state security official offices and also the offices of Al Ahram newspaper. It looked very much like those people are military trained, well military trained and logistically supported and financially supported. It doesn't look like a cult. It doesn't look like someone who has a religious background with a grudge, a wrong idea of the religion, or it looks much more like politicized. So how do you assess it? Because President al-Sisi have earlier hinted or pointed out to the fact of the importance of improving or renovating the religious discourse or the religious speech, not only in Egypt but in the Arab region. But it seems here that it's not only the religious discourse that needs to be renovated. There are other elements who are trying to bring down this country the moment that they see we are taking a step forward.
Listen, Dina. I fully agree with President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi when he says that we are launching a war against terrorism. It is a war. It's not a traditional war. It's going to be there for a long time to come. I fully understand the fury of Egyptians, but we have to control that fury. We have to cool it down. We're not going to have the same fury every time we have such terrorist acts, because we have to put in mind that we are going to have a repetition, a reproduction of such incidents, and maybe with more important proportions. Of course, the incident, the extent of the terrorist act is quite important, simply by judging the number of victims and injured people. But we have to understand that we are faced with a war that means first that we preserve our unity. That means second, to preserve the values that we have enshrined in our present constitution, and on the top of which the creation of a state of law. And we have to preserve our respect and provide the conducive environment needed for our judiciary. It has to do with the guarantees that have been provided in the constitution to every Egyptian to guarantee its rights. Right? So we have to cement the principle of the separation of powers that we have all agreed upon, and we have very well underlined in our present constitution. Now, the other thing is that we have to make it easy for the president, for the armed forces, for the police forces, for the security services, for the government, for the institutions of the state to perform in a conducive environment in such a way that they could fulfill their tasks, and we could reach the moment whenever we could contain that phenomena. We are faced with terrible circumstances to the east, to the west, to the south, and even to the north.